better than consciousness info. Sonnet or TV7. He keep it hot 24/7. He got that back for 102. Sonnet or TV2. Yeah.
You are now inside Sonnet Studios, the House of Consciousness production. Black news presentation.
Hello.
All right, my brother, how you doing, Professor Small?
All right, I'm peace and blessings to you, brother Sonnet.
Okay, it sound like you tired, man. You want to catch your breath, man?
I was out there cutting down a tree, brother.
Oh, wow.
Y'all boys live on 7th Avenue. The city be cutting down y'all trees for you.
Oh, you out there cutting? You out there cutting down trees, bro?
Yeah, but we just finished because the limb was bad and looked like that whole thing would fall anytime. So me and my son-in-law, my son, and my grandsons, I just got up on the ladder and got up there with a saw and went to work.
All right, that's what's happening. All right, my brother. So I would like to have a powerful discussion and remembrance and an honor. This right here is for Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, who have just made her transition to our ancestors, to the ancestors. I would like for you to give the people some history, what will be remembered most about our sister. And let's talk about Dr. Frances Cress Welsing and her work and commitment to our people, brother.
Yes, sir. You got to forgive me. I got a very bad cold and a sore throat, which I've been fighting for about 4 days now. So my voice may be a little in and out because I'm in a little bit of pain. Dr. Welsing was this extraordinary figure. Her premier work is called the ISIS Paper. And that work should be a must-read for any African-American, African continental, African Caribbean child or African Brazilian or Central South America, because we all the same family, just split up and stuff, all of us speaking different white man language. And those are the things that's different about us. And that's what Frances tried to show you, that what's different about you is what's white about you. And so in the ISIS paper, she deals very much with this chessboard concept, that you're either on the white side of the chessboard or the black side of the chessboard. And a lot of times we think we're on the black side of the chessboard, and we're really playing out white supremacy and blackface on the white side of the chessboard. So we really need to read the ISIS paper so we're clear on what white supremacy is. So we're clear on what white racism is. And then we're clear on why. Now, what Dr. Welsing told us, and then I'll come back to some of the history, she said the why was her big question. Why are these people so sick and so racist and so evil? And the why, she figured out, is the fear of genetic annihilation. Because black genes are supreme, superior, or what they say, dominant, and white genes are recessive. And so if black genes and white genes keep colliding, white genes will disappear completely. And so white folks know this. And right now, throughout the world, in Russia, in Greece, in England, in Germany, in America, the white race is at what is called minus birth rate, meaning they're having more natural death than they're having natural birth. But they're keeping up so far because they're doing artificial birth methodologies. But if it was left to just nature, they'd disappear in the next 100 years from the face of the earth, to 100 to 150 years. So it's the fear of genetic annihilation that they're afraid of, that our dominant genes will trump and wipe out their recessive genes. And though they are only 1/9 of the world's population, they use technology and propaganda to project themselves as a supreme majority of the world's population. And so Dr. Welsing's book gives a psychological analysis of this. It gives a spiritual analysis of this. It gives a genetic analysis of this. So the ISIS papers, my young brothers and sisters, is an absolute must-read. And then she'll talk to you about her teacher, a brother named Neely Fuller. I forgot the name of his Neely book because the title is so doggone long. But one of the things Dr. Fuller said was that if you don't understand white supremacy, anything else you think about racism is wrong.
Will only confuse you.
Will only confuse you. I see you've been doing your reading, so excuse me for being a little sick today, but I'm on it. But I first, like me and Dr. Jeffries, we met Dr. Welsing. You know, we've been friends since the 60s. And we all met at the Black Studies Conference. The first Black Studies Conference, or they call them sometimes the second, in Newark, New Jersey, during the Newark riots. And Dr. Welsing and Dr. Jeffries, like to joke, had the biggest afro you've ever seen because she was so tall, you know, and her afro stood out. And remember, this is 67. Sisters was out there on the front line, okay? The same thing we see the kids doing in Baltimore now and in St. Louis and so forth. Frances Welsing was out there in the streets. And she was telling the men then, y'all need to get your ass up out of this room and stop all this intellectualism and get out in the street and break them other brothers out of jail. That's the first encounter I had with this lady, okay? And so, you know, and through the years, she had been consistent with teaching us how, not only about what white supremacy is, but why white supremacy is, how to understand white supremacy, both in white people and black people, and how to counter it, you know. And she has been consistent and persistent. And she was not a PhD. This was a woman with an MD, a psychiatrist with a medical degree. And when she stood, as she, along with Dr. Richard King, myself, Brother Tony Browder, Sister Rosalind Jeffries, and a couple other brothers, we formed something back in the, I think it was the early 80s or late 70s. It was called the Kim Ware Science Consortium. And that was the group that began to hold the melanin conferences around the country. And she was our leader. She was the female leader, and Dr. Richard King was the male leader on what melanin was, what was the effect of melanin on black folks, and what was the effect of the lack of melanin in white folks, and what was the effect of their melanin deficiency. She began to break down something she called stereospezia, meaning our buttocks, why we got bigger buttocks than anybody else. And she said stereospezia showed you that you were evolving on the scale of evolution longer than any other human being. Man, that thing shook white people up. That's when she lost her job at Howard University. The Negroes ran out of the university for just raising those issues back in the 70s, so late 60s, early 70s. So she has been a front-line revolutionary thinker, a frontline revolutionary actor, a frontline revolutionary writer and lecturer and teacher, and was a part of every major movement going. She was here at the First World Alliance with Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben. She was in Brooklyn with us at the Slave Theater with Alton Maddox and the other brothers and sisters, Shashi McIntyre, Jeannie Bain. She was with us in the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization, ASCAC. She was with us in the African Heritage Studies Association in the 70s and the 80s. She was with us in the National Black Studies Associations in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And she taught her own classes. As a matter of fact, there was a lecture scheduled for the 19th of January, which now that she's with the ancestors, she won't be able to do. She was just one of those special spirits who loved black people. She lived in the black neighborhood. She didn't get her degree and moved away. She stayed right there in Washington, D.C. with black folks, in the hood, in her own home. So I don't know what to say about it, except she was the best example I know of a scholar warrior, the best example I know of a queen mother who showed her love by demonstration, you know, by being strong and standing up and walking with the young people. She was, anytime you saw Frances, she was surrounded by young people.
Well, that's what I always say, my brother professor. That's why you see me around a lot of young people today, And I always say, man, if we ain't got the young people involved, then we're not going nowhere.
You gotta keep transferring to the next generation. That's what this is all about. Because all of us are gonna die. I'm gonna be gone soon. You'll be gone. I hope you don't be gone soon. You behind me by a good 20 years. But we got me and Dr. Jeffries. We ain't gonna be around that much longer. We've walked with all of these other elders. They've gone on to the ancestors. So the best we can do now that we've made our best effort is to try to show y'all our errors and our successes. And then you have to borrow from those things, and you have to make your mark and then pass the baton to the next generation. But we got to make sure the goal is clear, and the goal has to be building the black nation.
Right.
The goal's got to be clear.
Talk to me.
You can't just be fighting for the fighting's sake.
Right.
We got to be fighting to build the black nation, and that's what Dr. Welsing taught us. She had this concept that she talked about that she called lap time. Thank you. And she had this concept called lap time, meaning that the reason black children, if you wanted to grow healthy black children, you had to not only be stringent and strict with them, but you had to be warm and gentle with them. You had to know how to hold them and embrace them. You had to know how to sit them in your lap and tell them the stories of yesterday, Yes. So with all the other things you were trying to teach the child, you had to make sure you gave them some of that lap time so that you could bond them to the ancestors and bond them to the elders and bond them to that body of knowledge that the ancestors and the elders has got. Because this thing is about building family for the sake of building the black nation. And don't ever forget, and she made that clear, we are at war. We are at war. We don't have no peace agreement with the white race. They haven't changed their behavior in 500 years. The only thing they've changed is their methodology for how they oppress us. And what Francis was good at was decoding their methods of oppression. And that's what the ISIS paper, and I can say it over and over, you must read the ISIS paper. And any speech, any tape, DVD you can get by Dr. Welsing, you in a university setting of black knowledge. And it was her commitment. This woman, like I said, we met in 1967. This is 2015, 2016 now. You understand? And she was consistent through all that time of being, that's gone, let me turn that off, being in this struggle with us and for us. And she understood what it was for. She wasn't under no illusion. She wasn't trying to be a big up Miss Dr. Francis Welsing. She got pushed out of all of the big white institutions and the big Negro institutions because she decided to be the black, the Afro Dr. Welsing. And there's a price to pay. But then Malcolm said the price of freedom is death. And if we're clear on that, the price of our freedom is death, then we're willing to do what Dr. Welsing to do. Spend your whole life in service to your people, trying to repair their shattered consciousness and their broken black identity. And she did an excellent job of that through the years of lecturing and teaching and instructing and informing the black population in America and around the world.
Talk to me about her. Talk to me about her debate. She did a debate before, and I seen her. I think she was taking on. Was it a white woman or white men? It was on the Tony Brown Journal. I think he covered it.
Yeah, and it's vague to me now. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
But no one dared debate Francis. I can remember the vagary of it. But that's when she was that's when she broke down African genetics, and showed that it was dominant. She wasn't even saying dominant shit. Francis was saying it was superior, so we got to stop biting our tongue and shit. We are superior. People say, well, if superior, how come they've been kicking our butts? They've been kicking our butts because they got the capacity to be an animal at a higher level than we do. We still clinging on to our humanity when we're fighting a war against someone that doesn't have any humanity. Plus, they've come up with the military technology, that guns and all the other things that we haven't come up with. That's the only margin of victory, not because he's smart or got this or that or none of that stuff. So, but back to Sister Welsing. She debated the African psyche, the African intellect. There was a period where they were trying, when they were talking about the bell curve, and even before the bell curve, they were talking about how black folks were inferior and that we couldn't handle the math and we couldn't do this. And Francis would take white folks on and time after time destroy them with just the statistics that they dare not use in America. If we just take the statistics that she would use many times of the black colleges, it would outrank most white colleges. And so she was very good at understanding the intellectual dialogue that whites was engaged in the academic arena, and she understood the survival dialogue that black folks were engaged in on the block. And she could bridge those two with the body of information she had that tried to tell black people that there's a way to behave that will allow you to operate in the interests of black people, and it is a way to behave that will allow you to operate in the interests of white people. And she tried to show us with her analysis of the chessboard that many times, even when black thinks I'm behaving in the interests of black people, you're behaving in the interests of white people. And I'll show you a good example. There's hardly a black person you can't see who don't want to attack Donald Trump. Now, what's different between Donald Trump than any other white folks? Except that the other white folks, the ruling elite, is attacking Donald Trump. So we then end up parroting the elite. Hillary Clinton and all of those other, and the Ted Cruz and all those other crackers, they're as racist as Trump. They just don't have the balls Trumps have in terms of being who he is. And then we get out here and start behaving like white supremacists in blackface, attacking the targets that our white supremacist ruling elite will attack in order to give themselves more primacy. I'd rather have a Donald Trump in there being the white man he is and the fool he is than to have one of those deception that got a lot of us chasing behind and calling somebody like a Bill Clinton the first black president. He's the biggest dope dealer that ever hit the black community. So Francis was trying to break down how we could understand these things. How do you understand white supremacy as it plays out in its propaganda? How to feel white supremacist propaganda and not succumb to it. Read the ISIS papers, people.
All right, let me ask you.
Honor Francis.
Let me ask you this.
Paper and study it page by page. And Dr. Welsing will live in us.
Yes, sir. Professor Smalls, I love it already, man. You dropping some real powerful information. Let me ask you this, my brother. What type of person was Dr. Frances Cress Welsing? Was she of a religious person? Was she more of a militant? Did she swing more towards the militant? Was she dealing with religion? Talk to us about that.
She was a militant African-American culturalist. Oh. I met her in 1967, and she had an afro. And she had that afro until the day she died. Yes. When it went out of vogue with other people, Dr. Welsing still wore her hair in the natural afro. I've never seen her with her hair straight. And no matter where she was or what type of clothing she wore, she always wore something, either a piece of cloth or some kind of material, and it had something to symbolize, her African essence. And when she walked into a room, her presence dominated the room, because you knew this power had walked in, because there was nothing that could be said about her that wasn't positive. Nothing. And she'd been around for 60, 70, 80, 90, 45 decades. When you could be around in the public eye for 5 decades, and people can't find nothing to say but you except positive, that's power right there. Yes, sir. She lived out the Netarus of Kemet. She lived out the Orishas of the Ifa Orisha tradition. She lived out the Loas of the Voodoo tradition. She became those qualities and attributes on behalf of her people. She was a true believer in freedom. And she was the kindest person and the most courteous person and the most polite person you ever want to meet. Last time I spoke to her, when we were in D.C. for the march, and she was having dinner with Brother Devin, And the reason I couldn't get over to the cafe where y'all was because I was with Devin and Dr. Jeffries at another hotel with Brother Akbar. But Devin later that evening took Dr. Welsing to dinner. And so we were able to talk on the phone, and I was hoping to make it to the dinner in January. Now, Devin is a brother who went to school at Howard. He's from Louisiana, but Francis kind of adopted him like a son. So he came to D.C. faithfully every 2 months for years just to have dinner with Dr. Welsing and some of her friends. And so, they always look forward to that. And that was the last time I spoke to her. The last time I saw her in person, I think, was the last ASCAC conference at Howard University a couple of years ago. And we took some photographs together. But she was a kind sister. She was, the best description is she was an Pan-Africanist, nationalist, African woman. Dynamic African woman. Powerful African woman. Straight up Pan-African nationalist African woman. And very soft-spoken, very gentle, very courteous. But when she opened her mouth at a lectern or in a debate, it was like she had a straight razor, and you had a ruler. She was going to carve your butt up.
Let me ask you this, brother. Talk to me about her theory. And where did she get it from? Did she do research on her theory and she studied it as far as when she talked about the pool table and the balls and the color balls and the black ball and black Mother Earth when you're playing golf and when you're playing basketball and, when you're playing baseball? Talk to me about her theory. How did she come up with this theory and how long did it take her to study and do research on that?
I don't have that type of detail. As long as I've known.
Well, tell me, hold up.
Using those analysis and those types of analogies. But she had a teacher, a brother named Neely Fuller. And Brother Neely had done extraordinary research on white supremacy and the behavior of white supremacy and the propaganda machine in America and the world. And I know as a medical doctor, there's a lot of scientific truth, if you are an honest human being, that you will see. I'm married to a medical doctor, so when you do an anatomy, you know the difference between what's dominant and what's inferior. And so when you're in those institutions where you were forced to do the kind of scientific research that Francis had to do as an MD, and then in psychiatry, where in the earlier stages, during her period of time, there wasn't a whole bunch of blacks going into psychiatry, via being an MD. And so you were learning about how white folks was trying to understand black people and understand how to dominate black people. That all comes from their psychiatric research and analysis. And she was studying in that field. So she had the opportunity as a black woman to use those same tools for black interests. And that's what's significant about Dr. Welsing. We got thousands and thousands of people with MDs, but they're not using those tools on behalf of black people. Dr. Welsing chose to use her tools on behalf of black people. And that made all the difference in the world. And that's how she's able to come up with theories that would allow us to gain an advantage in understanding the enemy we're up against. Because she used the knowledge, the research, technology, and the systems in the interest of black people. And that's the secret.
Mm-hmm. Powerful, my brother, powerful. Talk to me about where was you at when you first heard the news about our sister, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, and what have that done to you when you heard the bad news, brother?
Well, when Tony, what happened on it was New Year's Day, early that morning, Dr. Patricia Newton called me from Baltimore to tell me that Frances' sister couldn't reach her on the phone, so I called Tony Browder. So Anthony Browder went over to the house with the neighbor and the police, and they found her in her bed, unresponsive. And she was rushed to the hospital and put on life support, but that they had done a CAT scan, and they saw that she had had a couple of strokes that looked very badly. And the next morning, about 8, I knew then that she was already traveling towards the ancestors, and there was no coming back. But they had to wait for the sister who was flying from Chicago to D.C., and on Saturday morning, I'm sure the family says, take her off of those machines, because she had already traveled. And I heard from Dr. Browder early that morning that she had made her transition and was on her way back to her African village. And so, for me, it was kind of unbelievable because, like I said, I just talked to her in October, and she was fine. And she had a meeting that was scheduled for the 19th of this month in D.C. with a few people. I think it was probably going to be at Brother Neely's place or another sister's house. And so there was no sign, so this kind of hits you like a bolt of lightning. And then when even I knew on New Year's Day she was gone, I wouldn't let myself believe it. There was always the hope, and everyone was praying around the world. So when I heard, it was like another one of the close comrades that changed the world. A lot of time our young people say, well, the generation before us didn't do anything for us. Oh, Lord, y'all have no idea what that generation has done. What you got to do is do the research. There's thousands and thousands of books that was generated just in the last generation that we don't even read.
Yes, brother. Was there a, do you know if she had a peaceful transition?
Well, they found her in her bed, so she obviously had the stroke in her sleep.
Okay.
And I'm hoping it was peaceful because she was in bed. And how they found her sister, who I think calls her every day, when she couldn't reach her, called Dr. Browder and asked Tony if he would go over there, because Tony lived, about 30 minutes or so away. And when they couldn't get a response, they called the police. And that's how they got in the house. And they found her in her bed. But when the medics came, she was what they call unresponsive. But they put her on the respirator, and they had to wait for the family to get here the next morning. So she probably had already made her transition on New Year's Day.
Now, you know, Professor, right before her, we had another sister who goes by the name of Natalie Cole. She passed away the day before.
Right. A beautiful,
Yes.
The sister was an extraordinary vocalist who, suffered from some of the tragedies that hit many of our families in this society and it caused her great injuries. She left here too young when she was absolutely a brilliant, brilliant African culturalist, a brilliant singer and performer and songwriter and artist. And to leave at 65 these days, but I understood that she was in kidney failure for some time and was on dialysis after having had a transplant that didn't work out like it should have.
Yes.
But we, as a people, and Francis would be the first to tell you, as a people, we live for the next generation. And Francis lived for the next generation. Everything she did was to inform the next generation on how to behave. So to our younger generation, stop saying our generation didn't do anything for you. Read the books we left you with instructions.
Right.
Listen to the tapes we left you with instructions. We told you how to do these things. You don't have to go over the ground we went over. We done kicked the white man's ass. You don't have to do that. You have to take what we've learned and move to the next level and own your home and own your land and own your community and own your neighborhood and own your nation. We've left you the instructions. There's tens of thousands of books written just in the last 40 years by black people, for black people. And the ISIS paper is one of the premier books in understanding how to fight off this white supremacy, and understanding how to control your dollar, and understanding how to partner with your male or, your mate, and how to organize your mate and your children to build a family that's strong enough to bond with other black families. You understand? There's got understanding and build neighborhoods that can lead to nations.
Yes, brother.
The
Talk to
blueprints
me,
are
man.
all there.
Yeah, talk to me, brother. Tell me, how do you feel? Because my brother Sutek, I be catching Sutek in arguments with brothers, and they be saying stupid stuff like that about your generation. They dropped the ball, and we be looking at them like, yo.
The only reason they can even say we dropped the ball is because we didn't drop the ball. And they got rights and privileges and opportunities that Dr. Clark, study Carter G. Woodson, study Dr. Ben, study Dr. Francis Welsing, study Dr. Marimba Ani, study, Dr. Shashi McIntyre, study Dr. Jeannie Bain, and I can call thousands more. And you see what we've done. When I came to New York City, there was a city university, the second largest university in America. City College was the biggest college in the university. It had 22,000 students in the middle of Harlem, 1969. And it was tax-free, paid for by black tax money, just like it was paid by white tax money. Out of the 22,000 students, there's only 150 blacks. And we kicked the doors down, and we burnt the building down, and we took over 17 buildings, and we beat up white folks, and we put them in the hospital, and we made City College the largest black university in America. And now anybody can go to CUNY. And what we did at CUNY, boomerang across America. They call it open admissions, but we created that right in Harlem. So people telling you what we do is because they're not studying their history. They're out here playing little white boys in blackface, and when they find out they can't make no money rapping, then they come back on the corner and start talking stuff about a history they know nothing about because they hadn't properly researched it. We made some mistakes, but there have been no generation like ours. The Black Panther Party wasn't an anomaly. That was our generation. The Rams, the Revolutionary Action Movement, was our generation. The Nation of Islam was our generation. The 5% Nation was our generation. And I could go on and on and on.
So how that make you feel?
Generation, we produce thousands and thousands of pieces of literature. But not just the literature, we open up educational spaces around the world. We open up job spaces across the country. You couldn't get on the New York City Police Department if you were black. We made them kick the door down and change the standard. Yeah, they play some games on us. Once we force them to make the standards, then they pop up and say, well, you got to have 2 years of college, and try to put us in a trick again. But we just have to fight. That's a piece of the trick that this generation got to fight to abolish. But we made them open those doors, and we put the black cops there. But the problem is the young black cops from this generation who now got the jobs that we created have no loyalty and alliance to the black community. So don't blame us because you're disloyal. Don't blame us because you don't have no allegiance or alliance. Right. Because you think being with white folks is better than being with black folks until you get kicked in your testicles by white folks. Then you come running back to us asking, what do we do for you? I need to smack you upside your head. And don't think I'm just talking because I got the capability and the history to back the capability, even though I'm an old man now. But the bottom line is most black people young black people are taking advantage. They need to move it to another level in terms of the consciousness. We're at war. We're not sitting static. Every time we try to change something, the enemy tries to change, and we have to learn to understand it. And that's where Dr. Welsing comes in. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, with the Cress theory of understanding racism, shows us how to manipulate economically, politically, culturally, psychologically, intellectually, in the midst of white supremacy. So don't just talk about it. So Dr. Welsing was a great lady. Read and study the book. She got hundreds of DVDs out there on YouTube and other places. Listen to the DVDs with your notepad and your pencil in your hands. And then put it to work in your life. Scream out, I am Francis Welsing. I am Dr. Welsing. Be like Francis in her understanding of how to combat and assault white supremacy at its core. She left you the blueprint. Don't ever say she didn't contribute nothing for the next generation.
Right,
Right.
Right,
and when you read Francis, I would say the book that would accompany Dr. Welsing Isis paper is the book Urugu by Sister Marimba Ani and The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. If you read those three books, you can dominate your environment in white America.
Say them books again.
The ISIS Paper by Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. And then she had a buddy and a sister that she did a lot of work with called Marimba Ani. And she wrote a book called Yurugu, which means incomplete being. And she's talking about the white man. The white man is the Yurugu. He's the incomplete being. And Dr. Carter G. Woodson book, The Miseducation of the Negro. Those are three powerful books. And those two books going with Dr. Welsing, ISIS Paper, is an extraordinary document for any of us to read.
Let me ask you, brother, Professor, how come you don't have no literature out here yet, man? I mean, with all the breaks you got.
I've been out here longer than most people. I've been out here longer than Francis. I've been out here longer than Dr. Jeffries. I've been out here, but maybe Dr. Jeffries got me about a few years. He was in Africa, but I was in the Pan-African movement longer than most brothers, longer than some of the elders that you've buried, longer than a Khalid, longer than most of them. But I'm on the front line all the time. You need time to write a book. You know, I'm running a hotel in Africa. I'm running a credit union in Africa. I'm working with the World African Diasporan Union over here. In the last year, I've been trying to do as much work as I can with the young brothers in the red, black, and green, just to get to know them brothers and give them my service and my understanding. You know, when you're doing work out in the field, it's a little difficult. I'm still speaking around the country trying to help any black community, whether they can pay me or not, stand up and get up and wake up and see what they can do. I need to slow down because I'm not that young anymore, that's true. And I do need to write. I have a lot of materials that's not finished, needs editing, and I'm working on them right now. But it does require time. And the hotel have certainly in the last 10 years dominated what I do because I want to, and me and my comrades who are working with me, Dr. Jeffries and others, establish a base in West Africa for activists from this side. If we go, we have a place to stay. We have a place to do conferences. We have a place to hold meetings. We have a place to relax. If you just want to take your wife and say, I need to get away from America for a minute, go to the sauna lodge, go sit by the swimming pool, you know, sit by the pool bar, you know, have some, they have their own moonshine liquor over there, you know. I take a little brandy every now and then, you know what I'm saying? So go ahead and relax. Take a week off and come back home. So that's what we've been trying to build. And we built it. We've run it for 10 years now. And when no one would give us a loan on this side or that side, we created our own credit union, which is coming along very well after 3 years. So that's what has had me for the last, 10 years. But, before that, I was 18 years in Imam over Malcolm X's Muslim Mosque, Inc. I had 17 mosques I was running from the time I was 21 years old. And then when I left that, I went to City College. I wasn't just teaching in Black Studies under Dr. Jeffries. I created the Black Studies Department, and then we brought Dr. Jeffries there. You understand? And so I was also a full-time administrator running the Student Center and the Student Services Corporation. That meant the theaters, all the community programs came through me. And I did that for 18 years. So when you working 7 days a week to make sure black folks had access. So when you're doing the activist stuff, which you know very well, you don't have time to sit down and do much writing, even though I've had a lot of my stuff transcribed, and I'm trying to write some pieces on spirituality because, that's my center. But I would talk to Dr. Welsing about my ideas, and one thing I loved about Dr. Frances Welsing and her notion of spirituality, it was so on the African notion. She was so African in her understanding of divinity, and so I could talk about God being we're God having a human experience. And she was one of the first persons I ran that by, besides Patricia Newton. And she got it, and she was with it. She was very clear that she was a servant of the people.
Okay,
and she was very clear she was a servant of black people, not all peoples.
Right. Talk to me, man. Take this time out before we close to talk about...
My voice is getting ready to walk
out
the door.
All right. Talk to me real quick about the presence of Dr. Khalid. How much is Dr. Khalid missing right now? How much do you miss Dr. Khalid in this time period right now, brother?
Say that one again, brother.
In terms of our General Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. How much is Khalid missed right now amongst our people?
Oh, Khalid's missed like the rain in the desert, brother.
You know who I always say Khalid Muhammad remind me of? He was.
That's how I met you. I met you while you were with Khalid.
Right.
You know, I've known Brother Khalid since his early days in the nation.
Yeah.
And he also joined ASCAC while he was still in the nation. Matter of fact, the first panel I did in ASCAC, I did it with Khalid down in Atlanta, Georgia. And we were talking about religion and spirituality. And we got to be very good friends, you know. And I tried to stay as close to him as I could. When that hit came on him in L.A., I jumped on a plane and rolled out to L.A. Brother Reggie and the Brothers of the Sons, he had called for Dr. Jeffries. Brother Reggie said, no, we can't let Dr. Jeffries go, so they asked me to go. And so I went out there and moved with him, me and Malik Zulu and others, from there to Dallas and other places, and watching this extraordinary brother. He ain't scared of nothing. I ain't never seen a man that brave. Shit, I thought I was brave, but I was a coward compared to Khalid, you know.
Right. Hey,
And I just want to cite an example. A week or so after he got shot, and he was still limping around, and we were in Dallas, Texas. And I remember Malik was sleeping on the living room floor so we can guard the foot of the stairway, and he came downstairs and stepped over us 4 o'clock in the morning, tucked his 9mm in his belt, went outside, got in the car, drove to the supermarket, bought us breakfast, and I woke up because I heard food cooking. And he had the stove cooking for the rest of us, and I see all the grocery bags on the table. So I go, like, who went to the supermarket? He said, oh, me. And I go, like, you and who? He said, oh, me and my brother, 9. He like, you know, he was like that. Another time we were somewhere in Texas. You remember that picture that showed up on the front page of the newspaper with him holding the M16?
right.
We were together that night, and I knew that picture was a setup, and I tried to keep him from taking that photograph. And sure enough, as soon as he took it, I think it was 2 weeks later, it showed up on the front page of the New York Post. But we would talk to each other sometime every morning, you know, just kind of sharing notes and stuff, personal and struggle.
Let me ask you this, brother. Dr. Khalid Muhammad, did you have a sense of seeing him getting ready to move towards ancient Kemet? Because he's the only one that was in the Nation of Islam that was teaching about Imhotep and the pyramids and
into ancient Kemet before most of you were into ancient Kemet.
Yeah.
I mean, like, Khalid, he was in the ancient Kemet a long time. You know, he understood the organ. You got to understand, things are tools. The Nation of Islam is a tool. He helped rebuild that tool. That tool had done more for the salvation of black people than any other tool we had in this country. You know, in terms of redeeming young black brothers and sisters who were on drugs, who was in prison, who was on alcohol, and raising them back up to manhood and womanhood. And so he was a part of that process. He helped rebuild that process after the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's death. So, you know, leaving the nation wasn't an easy thing to do. It isn't like the nation is an enemy of black people. The nation is more friendly to black people than probably any other organization out here because the work they've done. See, people can disagree with Minister Farrakhan and his methodology, but you can't disagree with the organization that those people built. But in the context of all of that, he understood history. Khalid was a historian. He studied everything. And he understood history, and he understood the role that ancient Kemet played in history and in the formation of religions, including the religion of Islam. So I don't think he was going towards ancient Kemet. Ancient Kemet is no place to go towards. Ancient Kemet is just a part of the greater African picture. It's not in opposition to the rest of that picture or separate from that picture. It is a great part of that picture. And so he understood that, and that was significant, you know, very significant.
All right, my brother, I want to thank you, man, for taking the time out, giving the people some information on who was Dr. Francis.
Bring you up here to help me and my kids cut down the tree, and then we could do a show. My wife just came downstairs and gave me some water and a painkiller, and she went back upstairs. But it's always an honor to do anything with Sonetta TV, and the audience that tune into Sunetta TV, because I travel around the world and I meet people who saying, I saw and I listened to Sunetta TV. So the work that you're doing is good work, you know. And none of us
when you get better, brother,
making errors, but making error is how you get it right.
Right, and when you get better, you got to come on over here and give me that lecture you supposed to give me.
Yeah, yes, sir. And I think when I get back, I got to make a run over to Africa in about 2 weeks. When I get back, then we'll be free, because I got a lot of good things. I've just been busy trying to hold our project together. You know, the Ebola hit us very hard, and that's why I had to put up a GoFundMe page. So people want to help out. There's a SANA, S-A-N-A-A Lodge, S-A-N-A-A Lodge GoFundMe page. Send me $5, $10. And you'd be surprised, enough people sending the $5 and $10, we've been able to do a lot of good work at that hotel in Ghana. So I'm going to be going over there and working for a while, painting and doing some plumbing and some other things for about 3 weeks. Then I'll be back here before the end of the month.
All right, my brother. I thank you, man.
You're welcome, my brother. Give my love to the family, to them kids, and to the queen. Tell them I miss seeing them, but Happy New Year to them. You know, a lot of people say it's the Roman calendar, but people know that the Romans stole our calendar. They only shifted for, I think, what we call leap year. Everything else in that calendar is Kemetic. You know, it's just some adjustments they made. All right. Peace and blessings.
Thanks, brother.